Hello, everyone. I hope you all are doing well and enjoying your Millennium Fellowship journey so far. I warmly welcome you all for today's webinar. I'd like to take a moment to introduce myself and the project that I'm working on. I am Dua Abbas Zedi, a Millennium Fellow from the class of 2024, joining you guys from Health Services Academy in Islamabad, Pakistan. The project that I'm working on is titled SHIELD, which stands for Sanitation, Hygiene, Immunization, Education, and Leadership for Infectious Disease Prevention, which aims to advance SDG number 3, SDG number 6, and SDG number 10. Our project is implemented in Nupur Shahan, a peri-urban slum with a largely undocumented population of refugees and internally displaced persons. I am thrilled to be your moderator today, and I look forward to this exciting session filled with a lot of inspiration and creativity. Before we dive in, I'd love for those of you who have just joined to take a moment and introduce yourselves in the chat box. Please share your name, your country, and your university. We'd love to get to know you better. And for any of our fellows who feel comfortable, please raise your hand. And once I call out your name, you can unmute and go ahead and introduce yourself. Okay, great. I see so many people from diverse backgrounds. I see Ashmeet Kumar from Kathmandu University, Nepal. And okay, wow, I see people from Nigeria, more people joining from Nigeria. I'm sorry if I'm not calling out your university, but I'm really looking forward to where we have people coming from. And it's great to see so many diverse people. Another one from Nigeria. And we have people joining, a lot of people joining from Nigeria. We have Manha Zehra from Pakistan, Islamabad, Pakistan. Wow, we have someone from New York, United States. It's so nice to see people with such diverse backgrounds. It's amazing. We all are here working together to create social impact. We have someone joining from Spain, that's Clara. I guess I pronounced that right. We have Alvi from Bangladesh. I would like for all of you to please mention out your university and your campus and where you're coming from with your name as well, so that I can call it out. I'd love to know from which part of the world you guys are joining. I see Kirti from India. All right, great. I repeat, if anyone wants to introduce yourself due to time constraints, you can still go ahead and do that in the chat box. So I will now move on to the next segment of this global webinar. I would like to go ahead and introduce our incredible speaker for today, Zora Molnar. Zora is a 34-year-old trainer, former activist, and community organizer from Budapest, Hungary. Her educational background is made up of a graduate degree in social psychology and another one in public administration. She has extensive experience in designing and implementing training based on non-formal educational methods. She was responsible for coordinating a grassroots advocacy group of people with disabilities for 4 years. Currently, she works for multiple civil society organizations as program manager and trainer in Hungary. We're thrilled to have you here with us today, Zora, and I would like to now request you to share your keynote remarks with us. Zora, I believe you're muted. Please unmute yourself.
Okay, thank you so much. So first of all, thank you for inviting me. It's a great honor to be here with you today. And I would like to also say thank you to MCN and the United Nations Academic Impact for launching the Millennium Fellowship, and by doing so also make this webinar happen today. I'm really feeling honored to see so many emerging leaders here from all around the world, and it's really a great pleasure to be able to share my career journey with you. I will start with telling a little bit about my current job, so what I am doing today, and then I will take you to a retrospective journey on my professional career. And finally, for the end, I've also prepared some advice for you, which hopefully will be useful for your future career prospects as well. So just a little bit about my current job and background. Right now, as it is being said, I'm working for multiple civil society organizations in Hungary, but the biggest chunk of my work is spent at Skilly. Skilly is a young social enterprise. It was founded in 2019, and the goal of Skilly is to support people with disabilities in finding jobs, equitable jobs on the open labor market. And just a quick note, I have a disability myself. I'm a wheelchair user. So, but with many of the causes and many of the things I will be sharing with you today, I also have hands-on experience with. So Skilly works with people with disabilities to support them with finding a job in the open labor market, and social sustainability is very important for Skilly because we believe that the inclusion of people with disabilities in the society can only be sustainable if all the actors, including stakeholders from the public and private sector, and also NGOs, take their responsibility in moving forward the inclusion of people with disabilities, and also people with disabilities themselves are responsible for this as well. And at Skilly, I am the head of the Career Academy. The Career Academy is a comprehensive educational program which provides high quality and fully accessible educational opportunities for people with disabilities. It has a lot of different kinds of educational activities to offer, for example, professional courses, soft skill trainings, and language courses. We mainly teach English with a partnership with the language school. We also have community events, and we regularly run a career-focused mentoring program. And my job is to basically manage this whole program, and I'm responsible for the content development of the program and strategic planning of what are the next steps the program should take. I would like to share a little bit with you about the other two legs, let's say, what Skilly has, because I think it's a real comprehensive thing. So in order to gain a full understanding of my current job, it is important. So on the other hand, Skilly works with open-minded companies who are open and ready to employ people with disabilities. And we have different kind of, so we have basically an extensive package of services we can offer to companies in case they would like to be more inclusive for people with disabilities. It includes like a status check, which consists of different measures of their attitudes and accessibility conditions, and also interviews with the leaders and a questionnaire that the employees have to fill in. And last but not least, Skilly also pays attention to shape and change the image of people with disabilities they very often have in the society, because we often experience that people with disabilities, the image of the society of people with disabilities is often based on prejudices and stereotypes. And a very important part of our mission is to change this image. And now a little bit of how did I get to this job and to this position that I have today, which I would say is a mid-level leadership position, basically, which might be a little bit hard to interpret to our team because it's a very small team, made up of 6 people at the moment, but still I am responsible for an entire program and an entire leg of the organization. That's why I say it's kind of a mid-level leadership position, but I have quite a long career journey. How did I get here? Which I would like to share a little bit about with you. I started as a volunteer and intern. So when I attended university, as you could hear, I have a background in social psychology and public administration. I did quite a lot of volunteering and internship work. And after completing the social psychology degree, I enrolled at the Central European University because my desire was to have an international degree and to study somewhere in English. But given that I have been sitting in a wheelchair since I was born, I thought it's a big challenge to move somewhere abroad, and it was hard to collect the suitable information how I could go abroad. So basically, the internationality of studying at the university came to me to Budapest because CEU was based in Budapest at that time, and I completed public administration. And while I was completing my degree at CEU, I got in touch with the School of Public Life Foundation, which is one of the organizations I work for beyond Skilly at the moment as well. And they work with participatory action research, among other things. It is a community-based education and research center. And they had a call I was particularly interested in back in 2016. They were looking for people with disabilities who are interested in researching their own housing issues, or in other words, they were looking for participants for a participatory action research project. I was very closely affiliated to this topic because when I decided in 2000 that I would like to live in Budapest. I was born and raised in the countryside, and in 2012, I decided that I would like to complete my master's in Budapest. And it turned out it's almost impossible in Hungary to move away from your family if you sit in a wheelchair or have any other kind of disability. It's basically a mission impossible almost. And since that, I was super lucky because with the support of the local municipality in the district I have been living since then, I managed to move into an accessible apartment where I could not only start my studies but also start to work afterwards. But since then, I was looking for a community where I could start to work on housing issues or start to learn more housing issues at least people with disabilities might face, because I was sure by 2016 that for sure I am not the only person in the country who has issues with starting an independent life from their family and moving somewhere else to study or to work. And I was also sure that I would like to do something to achieve some positive change in these issues, but I knew absolutely nothing about community-based or participatory research. So I was a little bit skeptical in this sense, but I was like, let's see what this organization and what this group can offer. And a group called Living Independently in the Community Participatory Action Research Group was launched back in September 2016. And our research question was, this group was made up of, together with me, 10 people with disabilities and also 4 allies. And our research question was, what are the conditions of an independent living of people with disabilities in Hungary? This question was posed by us in 2016, but I can tell you that the answers are not so different today either. So we started this research and we realized quite soon that there are so many problems and issues to be solved in this field that it's just impossible to find a solution in the scope of a single research project for all these issues we explored during our research, because one of the key features of such research project is that it's not enough for us that we explore and study the problems, but we also would like to create and achieve positive changes in the field which affect the members of the research group very closely. So we decided to, so the research period was closed in June 2017, and the group decided to stay together and start to transform itself basically into an advocacy group. And we opened up the group for anyone interested to join, anyone who lives with a disability to join. And we were planning to continue to focus on housing issues still, but the mayor of Budapest at that time said that the stations of the Metro Line 3, which is one of the busiest metro lines of the city, will not be made accessible during the huge reconstruction project that was supposed to started that time, because people with disabilities do not use the metro. And we all got very angry how controversial this logic is, and it made us to change our focus of our advocacy work, and we started to focus mostly on fighting for making all the steps of the metro line stay accessible. We had a quite a long advocacy campaign. We used a lot of tools, from flash mobs, from negotiations. We even had a referendum on the horizon, which has never happened, but we started to collect signatures for the referendum to happen. We had a lot of negotiations, a lot of flash mobs, a lot of creative actions, and at the end of all this campaign, a lot of various advocacy techniques, in May 2018, the mayor of Budapest and the representative of one of the largest advocacy organization of people with physical disabilities in Hungary signed an agreement which says that all the steps of Metro Line 3 should be accessible by the end of the renovation, which happened at the end of last year. So this is the first full year when we wheelchair users and all those who have difficulties with moving are able to use the metro line in its entire length, which is amazing. I can still get emotional when I use that metro line, because I can still recall all the struggles we have and all the reluctance the decision makers had at the beginning, and how their position has changed, and how many people had to work on that campaign. So this is the biggest success I had when I was an activist and when I worked as a community organizer of this group, because I did it from a position. It was not an exclusive leadership position, because nobody called me as a leader in that group, because it was a very democratic grassroots advocacy group. But in practice, I had to behave there as a leader. I was a community organizer for 4 years in that group. We started to work on different topics as well, but this was our biggest topic, because we caught really well that political moment that was necessary to make this success happen and to achieve all those great results. It's not our own success. I always have to share this, but it's the success of a great coalition of many different actors. It's very important to mention. After this great success story, I had to face with the burnout 1 year later, because if you are an activist at a grassroots advocacy organization, you had to tell your own story, like I shared with you my housing crisis and how did I find solution for my housing, and then how did I find other people and the community to work with me on these issues. You need to tell the story day by day, again and again and again, the same things, and you basically become totally the same as your story. And I just got tired of sharing my story all the time and to make people sensitive of my own story all the time. So I kind of started to feel the signs of burnout. So I communicated to my group that I would like to give over the leadership position to somebody else, and I still stayed there with them as a mentor. But I clearly felt that I had to change my focus, and this happened at the end of 2019. And then in the meantime, the founder of the School of Public Life contacted me. We became friends by that time, and she contacted me asking that if I want to be one of the coordinator of the next participatory action research project the School of Public Life will be launching in 2020, because they are in need of one more organizer. And I said, yes, why not? Because I became, in spite of my skepticism at the beginning, By the end of our research process, I became a great fan of this approach. And by the way, by today, this is one of the topics I regularly hold trainings about, because by now I think that this is the only way how it works doing research, to engage the community and those who are affected in a real way. So I started to do this new participatory action research project. Uh, it was about It's supposed to have a different focus actually, but then COVID came to the world and to Hungary, and it transformed the focus of the research group, because originally the group was planned to focus on what we can learn from social movements happened in Hungary since our regime changed back in 1990. But then the group decided to focus on the impact of COVID on civil society organizations. So we examined that, and our research was centered upon this topic, which was super useful, but we kind of had to make a great change and make a great turn in order to make this happen. And after that, I was contacted in the middle of that research process. I was contacted by the founder of Skilly, whom I knew from one of the NGOs I was interning beforehand. She was contacting him because we became friends while I was interning at that organization. This organization is called Validity Foundation today. She was a project manager there, and I was an intern. We had some lunch together, and we had some nice chats. And in 2000, at the end of 2020, I was contacted by her. She was sharing that she's planning to launch this new organization, which is Skilly today, and she knew that I was suffering from this burnout, and I felt like I don't want to work on the field of disability issues again, because this is just too demanding for me. It's too much exposure of my own story and my own vulnerability. And she was contacting me, look, I need you. I would need you as an expert and an experienced trainer, but I can promise you, you will never have to tell your own story again if you don't want. And she confirmed from time to time. We had many lunches together, because I was a little bit resistant to go back to the field again, which was responsible for my burnout. And but she convinced me. I started to work for Skilly as a trainer at the beginning, and then gradually I got bigger and bigger responsibility at the organization, and gradually I also built up the concept of the career academy. And in a nutshell, this is how I uh, became the owner of this position. Today, I am the manager of this comprehensive program. I was actively taking part in the grant writing process, because we won a huge grant to launch this program. And I was the one who mainly worked on the concept, how the program should work. And I've been regularly still working on how we should develop it and what the next strategic steps should be. So in a nutshell, this is how I found myself to work in education, because I feel like that's a field I have not only professional but also personal experience in, because I truly feel my privilege due to the quality of education I could get, and I can clearly see how disadvantaged the communities of people with disabilities might be, just because they have no access to quality education, either for financial reasons or for the lack of accessibility conditions they might need. Or even if they have access to education, the level of or the quality of these educational opportunities are much lower very often than the quality of the education their non-disabled counterparts may have access to. So nowadays, my mission is to give back something to the society and to other people with disabilities I got from the educational opportunities and the teachers and mentors I had back in the past. So I was going to share with you about my professional journey, and if you have any questions or if there was anything which was unclear to you, because I know that it was a lot of information and I tried to create some chronology, but I'm not sure how successful it was because these things are really interconnected to each other in my life. So feel free to ask any questions if you have.
Thanks a lot, Zora. I think that you have given us such a great, your contributions towards inclusivity, towards people with disabilities. It's incredible, and I think that all the fellows over here, including me, we've learned a lot. There's a lot of insights. So I'd request all the fellows, if you have any questions, please go ahead and drop that into the chat box, or you may raise your hand, and then once I call out your name, you can start out by introducing yourself, and then you can ask the questions. Meanwhile, Zora, I have a question for you. So, inclusivity. Inclusivity is intersectional and it is incomplete without equal rights for disabled individuals. So, as young leaders who have, I'm talking about all of us, the Millennium Fellows, we have just started, our social impact journey. So, what advice do you have for us to ensure that the spaces we create and the impact that we create, they are truly inclusive?
So as you said, inclusivity is always intersectional. It also means to me that it can have many different layers. So many different needs might come up if we think about inclusivity. So one thing I would advise you, maybe it sounds trivial, but still I think it's important. Please always ask those who are affected and who have really have these needs related to inclusion, because you can ask the best experts, you can read the best and most up-to-date literature. It never will be the same as you would ask the person, the concrete person you would, or the community who would like to create the inclusive space for. So I know it's super trivial, but still, this is my first advice: to create inclusive communities and ask them at the start, because I think it's much easier to plan in an inclusive manner than to modify or shape your plans in midway, for example. And thank you. It's a great question, I think.
Thank you so much. So to all the fellows, as well as Zora mentioned, that you need to start working with the plan inclusivity, and then make it part of your projects and your social impacts. So I would like to take a question from one of our fellows who has dropped it down in the chat. That's Beatrice. I hope I'm pronouncing that wrong. If not, please pardon. So she said that she's really motivated by your resilience, and she would really like to know that what kept you going even after you faced so many obstacles.
Great question. Thank you. And I think it's a bit difficult question to answer even to myself. But thank you for posing this. I think the key in my case was to find always a different angle of the same or very similar issues which are new to me and I can still find motivation in. So this is the reason why I never totally left the field of disability, for example, even if I felt burnout. And to answer from a more personal perspective would be is that even if I had a lot of challenges to face, still yes I had, but I still always felt privileged because I, for example, never had to live in a big institution, and I never had to leave my family or neglect my family for months or years because their priority was always to keep me in the family and to provide me with the best education and best opportunities in life, even it was challenging sometimes. And somehow I always managed to find the, let's say, the pieces of gratitude in my past, and I could have power from this, and I could find motivation and power in these little pieces of gratitude and little pieces of success stories also. But this question, I have to say, sometimes a bit challenging to me to answer even to myself, because it's not always easy to see these positive things.
I must say, Zora, you're truly an inspiration, and hats off to all the work that you have done. I'd like to ask another question. So stigma, taboo, and marginalization, they are terms that we hear and we confront every day as young leaders. So we talk about stigma, we talk about taboo. So transforming the lives of communities becomes more difficult due to systematic barriers and social exclusion. Based on your journey, what advice could you give us, again, the Millennium Fellows who are over here, in regards to building relations with communities we are serving and ultimately the policy change?
Uh, I think the first and maybe most important thing is to take the time to get to know these communities. It's always easier if you have someone who is a member of the certain community, but please take the time to get to know the community in a detailed manner, because in this way you will know exactly what they need and you will answer the question in an honest manner. And yes, I would advise you to be sensitive and responsive and be patient also, because if you have no experience with the community, it will not be obvious for the first moment how you could approach them or what policy change would be the most suitable for them. It takes time, takes energy, but I think it definitely worth the effort, because it can be really cathartic if you can do something which is really beneficial for a certain community.
So, again, towards the Millennium Fellows, you should definitely, as Zora just said, that we need to get to know the community that we're trying to work in. So, if we know the people, then we can work better. So, okay, so there's another question um, from Nigeria. I don't think I can pronounce the names right. Sorry, guys. So, okay, the question is that the majority of us have been facing resource constraints which won't motivate us to impact our project. So, how can we impact a project without using any resources?
That's a tricky question, and this is again something I keep struggling still, especially if you work with people with disabilities, for example, which I have the closest experience with. You always need to spend on accessibility measures, for example. When it comes to the venue, when it comes to sign language interpreters, I know it might be a lot, but still, if you would like to work for change, or if you would like to move things forward, and if you don't have the resources yourself, what I would advise you is to join a community, an existing community of activists, volunteers, and if they have an organization behind them, for example, you can ask the organization if you can apply for a grant together, or if you don't have an organization yet, you can start to think together to launch something. I think it's always easier to solve these issues if you have a community around you. So don't stay alone with your budget constraints, because once you have some other people who would like to work for the same kind of change as you do, it will be much easier, because it will be much easier to write a grant, for example, to figure out how it goes to launch an organization legally. I know that in some countries, including Hungary, it might be quite complicated, but still, if you work in a group, you will have different kinds of expertise, different kinds of experience. And if you put together all those experience, it will just create something amazing, and you will be more efficient together as you would do by your own.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Zora. So before I move forward, I'd like to again repeat that, dear fellows, if you have any questions that you want to ask to Zora, please feel free to write them down in the chat box, and make sure that before you ask your questions, just write down your name and your university along with the question, or otherwise you can raise your hand and ask your question in person as well. So yeah, Zora, as you just said, and I would here take a moment and quote our example as well for the previous question, that up till now Team Shield is working, without resources. We have all, find collaborations, like-minded people, and we just saw that, if there's someone working on the same initiative and they could collab with us and, help us in creating the impact and the social impact that we want to create. So yeah, just an example that I wanted to quote. So Zora, I have another question for you. So in your research article, opportunity from crisis, crisis from opportunity, based on the COVID-19 pandemic, you talked about the role of civic organizations and governments and the opportunity to bring systematic change. So as you see the world today post-pandemic, how do you see inclusion in economic development and capacity building?
I think it's very hard because in my experience, the pandemic had a lot of positive impact on the inclusion of people with disabilities. For example, the home office opportunities at the workplaces became more widespread than they were before the pandemic. So it can equalize a little bit the economic inequalities, but I would be more careful with saying it's the clear way towards economic inclusion of people with disabilities or other minority groups, because I always say that we need to be careful of using online solutions or home office to work with people with disabilities or other minorities, because it can never substitute the real inclusion and the building of real communities. Because if we have someone who can only join online while we are together somewhere else in a room, and we have only one or two members online from different reasons, not just physical reasons or medical related reasons, it might be also economic reasons. They cannot afford the travel cost to the venue of the meeting, maybe, or I don't know, they have small children at home who they can't take care about otherwise. They just need to stay at home. It's not real economic. It's a way to, or a tool for partial economic inclusion, but I would think the real inclusion is if we are able to create spaces where everyone we would like to include in that certain community can be together. So it's accessible physically. We have someone who can take care of the small children, and we can even reimburse the travel cost of those who are in need of this.
Thanks again, Zora. That was very insightful, and thank you so much for answering my questions. I am taking a question from one of our fellows. That's Binta. I hope I pronounced the name right again. So she said that, what advice can you give to someone who wants to major in a course like psychology, and that can be beneficial to sustainable development within the country, focusing on SDG 3, but it's not available in the country and the person has limited resources?
I think, yes, it might be useful, but I have to confess here that personally I never worked as a psychologist. So I never had a job title which said I am a psychologist, but I found it useful many, many times that I have a background in psychology. But if you would like to work in the field of sustainable development to complete a BA and then start to study something else, because psychology will in itself not be enough to work in the field like that. It can be useful, but if this course is not available in your country, I would advise you to start something related to sustainability or which is closer to SDG, and then as a second degree or a certificate, you can complete psychology related courses even online or even with a study abroad semester. You can, if you have the opportunity to go to a study abroad semester, you can do so and then learn some psychology related courses. But I think psychology in itself will not take you close to work in development related fields, because in my experience there is a need of different competencies there than you can learn in a psychology faculty. I hope it's not so disappointing. Sorry for that. But I really feel like if I could go back to the past, I was I was rather choosing something else to start with as a first degree, and then later on, if I am still up for studying psychology, or if I was still seeing the need of having some psychology related knowledge, I I was doing it as a second degree.
I hope the question was answered. I hope, Binta, that your question was answered and you're not disappointed, as Zora said. So again, I repeat, fellows, if you have questions, please drop them in the chat box so that they can be answered. And Zora, as you mentioned, that listening is important. It is important to always be ready to learn. So, what are your advice to actualize that? How do we ensure that as we listen and learn, we are simultaneously putting that into action as well?
Yes, I think, and this is one of the advice I prepared with for the fellows. I think what helped me the most during my career to have mentors. I had a range of mentors during my careers, but I only had one or two who are really good and who really had the same values and same attitude as I had. So I would advise you to have mentors. I don't want to use the word supervisor because I know that it might have a different connotation, but still I would advise you to have mentors whom you can trust and who you are happy to share your dilemmas with. So if you have a good mentor, I think it can be a kind of guarantee that you are going to have someone who to tell you regularly, look, you listen this and this, you have this and this experience. What's next? How you are going to take the next step on your journey? So I think a good mentor is essential. And I would go back to the sense of community again, because if you work with a or as a part of a community, it will never happen that someone will not remind you, look, we listen to, I don't know, 50, 100 people to share their experience in a certain topic, and it's time to do something with that lot of information or that great amount of experience. Let's plan together what the next step should be. So two things, a good mentor or mentors, depending on how many good people you manage to find. And in my experience, it's really good if the mentoring is voluntary. So if you are if it's a must for you, if you are required to have a mentor and to have regular sessions with a mentor, it will never be so efficient as if you could choose your own mentor, and it's up to you how often you contact your mentor and what you are sharing with the mentor. So having a good mentor is essential, and then to keep the sense of community is the second thing I would say.
Yes, definitely. I agree. A good mentor is very important. All right, so I repeat again to the fellows, if any one of you want to ask in person as well, you can definitely raise your hand, and once I call out your name, you can start by introducing yourself, and then you can ask your question. Meanwhile, I'm taking another question from one of our fellows who put that in the chat. So it's Estone, I think I pronounced that right. So they're basically saying that considering that most of us are students and students have a very busy and very happening life, so with that, how would you advise someone planning or doing the same kind of project? How would they plan for the time?
You mean the research project, I guess, or at
Yes,
least I
yes, the
suppose
research
this
project that you mentioned, yes.
for the research project. Yeah, it's a challenging question. Now I have a student I am kind of mentoring, and she is doing a participatory research project for her thesis. I know it might be a challenge, um, but I would say try to determine very clearly what are your what are your capacities for the project, because participatory action research has many different layers, how deep it is, how extensive it is. So be clear and be honest with yourself first, how much energy you can put in doing that research, and when you are done with this calculation kind of, you can determine more easily what is the scope of question, for example. You can find the answer to how big is the community or the group you can work together with. Try to find if you have limited amount of time and energy, I would also advise try to find a community which is kind of ready. So you don't need to build a group from zero, but you have a group which already exists. So you can just quotation marks, because it's never easy, but you can go there still more easily and then start to talk to them, spend some time with them, and then you can figure out together what the question is. They would like to find the response to also with your support as a kind of ally or researcher, and what is still feasible to you in the frame of your thesis.
Eston, I hope your question was answered and that I also asked it right. So again, fellows, if you have more questions, please feel free to drop that in chat or raise your hand. Zora, I have one more question. So in 2018, you led a successful movement to make all stops on one of Budapest's major metro lines accessible to all wheelchair users. So as an activist, as well as someone who specializes in public policy, how did you navigate government and private stakeholders in this fight?
Yeah, it was not an easy fight, to be honest. We had to take into account a lot of different interests and a lot of different aspects of the same issue. And the fortune is that I was not alone in this fight. So there were other allies of our group who mainly negotiated with the government and public stakeholders, whereas others organized the flash mobs and other creative actions with grassroots initiatives and other private stakeholders. So I think we were in the lucky position that we need to just bring together all those different actors who were motivated to take part in the campaign and then find the right place or most suitable task to everyone. And then basically the navigation was about finding the right people for the right tasks related to the campaign. And then to be there to delegate a lot of tasks to my fellow activists, and then to be there when it was really necessary. So, for example, I put particular attention to show diverse faces in the media. If you look at the recordings from that time or the articles, I was never, I was barely never visible in the articles or in the videos, because my point is to show that it's not a campaign of a lonely fighter, but a campaign of a community, a campaign of a huge coalition, let's say, who are all determined, and all the members of this coalition has their own strengths. And yes, it's hard to navigate who should who should use, let's say, or utilize their strengths, but you could always find a good compromise. It's just the important things was just not to forget about the common mission or joint mission you had, which was to make that metro line accessible, and then all the tensions and all the conflicts went behind this joint vision, because it was the one and only moment to make that metro line accessible, because we all knew that if this is not happening now, it will never happen in our life, because it was a huge EU funded tender to make the metro line accessible. So it was really the only opportunity to win this fight. And if we reminded ourselves that this is the stake basically, that we need to do it now or never, we could always find a compromise or a way to navigate around the collaboration or around the different stakeholders, even if it was not easy and it was full of tension very often.
So thank you so much for answering all the questions, Zoya. And unfortunately, we're headed towards the end of today's extremely inspiring session. So before we go, Zora, is there anything, any final advice, any final remarks that you'd like to share with all of us?
Yes, I was going to talk about the mentoring, which I already did because I think it's, for me, it was one of the key to find the best mentors at the best times when I needed them the most. And the other thing is, I wanted to refer back just briefly about my story about burnout, and I would like to encourage you to realize if you feel any mild symptoms or signs of burnout. Realize it in time and don't be afraid to ask for help or don't be afraid to take a break, because it's much more important to be healthy not only physically but also mentally and stay motivated than to finish this and that task or take part in this and that campaign. So please prioritize the long-term goals and the long-term well-being, both of your body and of your mind.
Thank you so much, Zora. I think that was a great advice for all the fellows, including me, that the mental health is equally important as your physical health. I think we still neglect that, and we're not as working on it as much as we work on our physical health. We really look forward, to work on our physical health. How do we appear? So, guys, take inspiration from what Zora just said, and her entire journey, that she faced a burnout, and then she still worked it out, and she worked on her mental health. That's amazing. And I hope that all the fellows over here are as inspired as I was today. So thank you so much, Zora. If there's any contact information, social media handle, email, anything that our fellows can use to stay connected with you, please drop it out into the chat so we all can take notes and we can stay connected.
Okay, and I would like to just say thank you for having me today. It was a pleasure to share my story with you.
Yes, Zora, thank you so much for being here today, for sharing your journey with us. So, guys, all the Millennium Fellows, please take notes of the contact information and the email that Zora drops in the chat. And it was an amazing session today. I hope you all enjoyed. So, thank you to all the fellows for joining us for the webinar today. And just a reminder for everyone to keep an eye out on your emails for further details about our upcoming webinars. We have an exciting session with Anna Maximovic this Thursday, 17th October. We hope to see you all over there, and thank you very much. Thanks a lot, Zora, once again. I hope you all
Thank
have a
you.
wonderful day ahead.
Thank you so much. Just sharing my LinkedIn quickly because I already shared my email, and this is all my contact info here in the chat. If you wish to contact me, please feel free to do so, and I wish you all the best for the fellowship program and beyond as well.
Thank you so much, Zora.
Thank you.
God.
Have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you. I guess that's a wrap. That's a wrap for the session today.